Today, we will talk about how posture disorders develop and what to do to correct your posture, eliminate scoliosis, and get rid of back and lower back pain. The abdominal muscles play a very important role in the formation of posture. And first of all, it's the rectus abdominis muscle. The rectus abdominis muscle stabilizes the pelvis, the thoracic spine, and the lower back. Very often, it's the first one to weaken. In other words, it's one of those muscles that loses tone first and stops working first. And then all the other muscles can't function properly either. Because pelvic stability is lost, proper support on the foot is disrupted, and balance is lost, there are several ways the abdominal muscles can weaken, but in each case, the abdominal muscles also tend to change their position. They protrude a little forward. That is, if we draw a line connecting the edge of the rib cage and the edge of the pelvis, if we draw this line, the abdominal muscles tend to protrude beyond this line. And this can happen in several ways. There may be more weakness in the lower part of the abdomen, where the lower abdomen protrudes more, or it could be the upper part of the abdomen. These issues are more evident in it. And in each of these positions, maybe in the middle. In each of these positions, they also tend to move apart from each other. This can also be more noticeable in the middle, at the top, or at the bottom. When the muscle takes on this shape, it loses its ability to contract fully because it becomes longer than it should be. Although its length doesn't really change. And when the muscle contracts, it can no longer return to its original length. And that's why proper stabilization of this part of the torso doesn't occur. As a result, the pelvis starts to wobble during movement. That is, the rectus abdominis muscle, one of its functions is to hold the pelvis in a certain position during movement. Fails to do so. If it doesn't perform its function, if it sags like this, then the pelvis starts to move during movements, for example, during landing. So, when we land on our foot, it starts to drop like this, wobbling from side to side. If a person's back muscles are working, meaning they're active, then to avoid injury and to prevent this unnecessary pelvic movement, which would constantly injure the lower back right here, a person stops doing some movements, and to limit their movements, they start overusing, for example, their back muscles. So, during walking, they've developed an incorrect movement because their abdominal muscles aren't working. His center of gravity is excessively shifted forward, meaning he's gone far beyond his base of support. That's why, at the moment, when the person steps forward, their center of gravity shifts even further forward, making it even harder for them to maintain their balance. That's why he loses the front part of the step when the leg swings freely forward. When it is first placed down, and then the weight is transferred onto it, he immediately experiences sort of falling as he steps onto his leg, meaning he actually starts taking half a step, and his step keeps ending all the time. Somewhere around here, that is, the leg doesn't go out far, and he lands almost simultaneously. with his head ending up in line with the leg he's landing on. In this case, the movement is formed because the back muscles don't let the leg go any further. Because if a person has this kind of movement, if the leg goes out further, he'll land on it later and injure his lower back and injure his hip joint. That's why he doesn't do this part of the step. He stops his movement using his back muscles, and he loses this front part of the step. And that's why these people start to overdo it. For example, to walk faster when they need to speed up because they have poor leg extension forward, since the leg can't move forward and isn't supported by the abdomen. They start pushing themselves forward too much. So they get this push, this movement, and at the same time, the leg gets overloaded and the back gets overloaded. So that's one scenario to show you how the abdominal muscle affects excessive tension in the back muscles. In this case, there will constantly be problems with movement, with bending forward. Because when you bend forward, your head will always move too far forward. Your back will constantly hurt. Your lower back will hurt. There will be pain here between the shoulder blades because every time you raise your arm, it puts even more strain on all of this. You constantly have to fight against falling forward with excessive tension in these back muscles. So this is the first type of disorder that can occur with weak back muscles. In this case, the lower back and thoracic spine suffer more. Also, in this case, it happens very often. Restriction of breathing. That is problems with inhaling, because the rib cage is already in a position of maximum inhalation here. And that's why a person constantly feels like they don't have enough air. They want to inhale more and more. This is the first type of disorder that can occur, and it is more common in women. The second type is more common in men, but it also happens that both men and women can have both types here. In this case, unlike the first type, the back compensates for the weakness of the abdomen. Here, in this case, the weakness of the abdomen is compensated by the gluteal muscles. That is, the glutes become quite tense and strong. So, if the glutes are capable of enough effort, they can support the pelvis instead of the abdomen. But at the same time, another issue arises here. That is, in this case, during a step, especially during fast walking, when there is this situation when the leg stays behind. Here, there is constant, excessive tension in the lumbar muscle in the front of the thigh, along the side of the thigh. There is tension in the iliotibial band. And in this case, the pain is most often in the leg, especially in the left leg, because the muscles there are usually less developed. For right-handed people, the left side is affected more, and most often the left leg hurts along the back and side surface. So statistically, pain happens much more often on the left side due to weakness. And on the right side, it's more often due to overload. And in this case, it's because the gluteal muscle doesn't relax in time. Here, the back isn't loaded as much as it is here. And it's not as well developed. So here, the gluteal muscle is tense all the time, but the back doesn't get too much load. So often the back is actually weakened. That is, the back muscles become weaker, inji self. And in this case, problems arise in the front of the thigh and in the hip joint. Pain occurs during prolonged walking, and here, there is usually no problem with moving the leg forward. That is, it moves forward more or less well, but here, the landing is very hard because the calf muscle in the back leg is working excessively here, and it rises onto the toes, and with each step, the person starts to bounce up like this, lifting themselves up on their toes. And in the case, problems with pain in the trapezius muscles are also very common. Headaches occur because in this position, the neck muscles and the trapezius muscle are constantly overloaded. Here it receives the wrong kind of load. That's it. In this case, in each of these cases, you need to start the exercise with certain muscles. And you can't do stretching exercises. You can't stretch certain muscles. That is, in this case, you can't stretch, for example, the muscles that are already excessively stretched. In this case, you shouldn't stretch those muscles. I will show and explain in detail which exercises to do and how to do them on the new channel, on the Telegram channel. Not everyone, my dear friends, will be able to join it. Only some of you. I will explain in detail how to join it and what will be there soon in the next video. There, we have mainly been discussing theory with you since the channel was created. Different options, what they could be, and how they could work. But now it's finally time to reveal how all of this can be fixed, what kinds of exercises there are, and how to do them correctly. I will talk about this in detail because the channel's audience has become too large. 130,000 people, that's just too many. A lot of people have shown up. Some people came by accident and subscribed by accident. That's why I liked it more. When I had 50 people on my channel and I knew everyone by name,